Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review for the fan film called The Last Nightmare Part 1, and it's directed by my friend Braden Timmons. Now Braden did do a movie before this called The Haddonfield Nightmare, which was a sequel to Halloween H20. Braden is a big fan of Halloween H20 and he knows that I'm a huge fan of Halloween H20 as well. So I think when it comes to trying to do a sequel to H2O, it's become a bit of a sacred ground for fans of H2O because there seems to be not that many fans anymore of H2O. Me being one of them, I am a massive fan. So I did a review for the Haddonfield Nightmare a few years ago, and I thought it was great, a great introduction to Braden Timmons's attempts to do fan films of the Halloween movies. And I think what's unique about the Haddonfield Nightmare was the fact that it was a sequel to H2O, and they'd done it in the same vein as they did Halloween 2018, where it ignores all the films that came before it and just does a direct sequel. It's the same with H2O. It ignores Resurrection, it ignores Rob Zombie's movies, and it, of course, ignores the David Gordon Green trilogy. It just goes from H2O to the Haddonfield Nightmare, and I thought that was pretty cool. So when he announced he was going to be doing a follow-up to the Haddonfield Nightmare, it got me interested because I thought, where are they going to go from there? Because it already went from H2O to the Haddonfield Nightmare. In this story, John thinks he's killed Michael from what he'd done at the end of the Haddonfield Nightmare. Michael is taken to a morgue, but he wakes up and he kills the people in the morgue and he continues on his killing rampage. We can also assume that it's still set on the same night and it's still set on Halloween. For a movie that's less than 45 minutes long, there's definitely a lot of kills in this one. One of the most memorable ones is the killing of Vanessa, because Vanessa is one of the main characters in this Haddonfield Nightmare, what we're going to call a trilogy. And she's killed in this one. And I feel like she's killed in the same vein as Annie was in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I think what Braden was going for was a more heartfelt aspect because Vanessa was one of the friends of Lauren. Because this is the first part of a two-parter, there is no conclusion at the end of this one. This might hinder your experience, and it does not just for fan films, but for any types of films that's got a part one and a part two. When it finishes all of a sudden, it feels you're left like you've only paid for half the movie, even though this is free. But when it comes to fan films, I think we can forgive them for that because we know what they're trying to do is something a little bit bigger than just a basic fan film that lasts 40 minutes, because this one was just under 45 minutes, and I'm assuming that part two will be roughly the same. So in terms of the story, it doesn't really go anywhere. It only goes from Michael waking up in the morgue to going on a killing spree and continuing the killing spree until the end of this part one. Whereas we've got Lauren and her dad John that are going around with the police trying to track him down. And that's basically the premise of this story. When it comes to Michael in this one, he's way more consistent than he was in the Haddonfield Nightmare. The reason for that is because multiple people played Michael Myers in the Haddonfield Nightmare. He even wore a pair of trainers at one point. Whereas in this one, Braden listened to the fans of the first one and he decided to cast one person as Michael. It was Chad Sumner that played Michael in this one. I think it was a lot better having someone as big as Chad playing Michael Myers because he was more consistent. He walked the same throughout the entire film, and I didn't notice any Converse trainers this time. Practical effects were much better as well. I think it's because Braden did have a bigger budget to work with. I think a lot of the practicals were kind of hidden in the first Haddonfield Nightmare, whereas in the last Nightmare, we saw the practicals in full effect. Cinematography, I feel, was a lot better as well, and I think that comes with experience because Braden has done the Haddonfield Nightmare. He's done other projects that are not related to Halloween as well. So having some of those experiences behind him, coming to the last Nightmare, he knows what works and what doesn't. I feel like the acting was a little bit better in this one as well, and I think it's also down to experience because some of the cast were coming from Haddonfield Nightmare to this one. They've had 3 years to get the acting on point, and I think they were a lot better in this one as well, especially from Peter Jurich, who plays John Tate. And I have to call this out as well, guys, because I still believe that that was fantastic casting for a fan film, because when you look at Peter Jurich up against even a modern day Josh Hartnett, they're quite similar in build, stature, and even look the same as well. So when it comes to casting for John Tate, I still think this was absolutely phenomenal casting. The overall look and the feel of The Last Nightmare was also better than the Haddonfield Nightmare. But now, when I'm saying all these things are better than the Haddonfield Nightmare, it doesn't mean I don't like the Haddonfield Nightmare. I still think that was a good film. I just feel like some of the things that Braden feels like he could have improved on, he did. Like I mentioned, there's lots of kills in this one. For under 45 minutes, there's a hell of a lot of kills in this one. So I think any fans of Michael Myers who loves to see Michael Myers going about killing people, I feel like this fan film is definitely for you. There is a few things that I didn't like about this fan film, and I'll touch on them just now. First of all, it's the score. Now, some of these negatives are still positives. So for example, the score. The score was great, but it made me feel like we were watching the David Gordon Green trilogy, whereas the original Haddonfield Nightmare, it felt more like a sequel to Halloween H20. Whereas in this one, because of the score made me feel like it was a sequel to the David Gordon Green trilogy rather than the Halloween H20 that we were supposed to get. So like I said, score was great. It just didn't feel as H20 as I wanted it to. Another con that I did touch on was it feels like a filler for something else. And it is a filler for part 2. Sometimes I feel like breaking it into part 1 and part 2 could potentially hinder the project itself. It hasn't fully done that. It hasn't hindered the project at all because it was still an enjoyable fan film. But some people might watch this thinking, I've got half a story. And you do have half a story. I just hope that they're able to finish part 2 so that we don't continue on thinking, what could have been. We go from scene to scene in this film as if we're in a hurry. We're in a hurry to get to the end of this part. That can also be taken as a positive as well, because there were some scenes I wanted to savor because there was some really good moments, some nice cinematography in a scene, and then it cuts and goes to another scene, and then Michael's killing someone else. So it feels like it is hurrying along. I know that they're short in time, they're short in budget, but there is ways to kind of manage that. So hopefully they can do that for part 2. And finally, Lauren. I feel Lauren so far has been underutilized. She is the daughter of John Tate. So I want to see more of Lauren in part 2. Maybe that is the plan. Maybe we're saving her to the very end. I feel like she didn't have a big role in the Haddonfield Nightmare, and in this one, she takes a back seat for most of this film. So I don't know if that was intentional by Braden and the crew, but I do want to see more of Lauren because she is an interesting character. The girl who plays her is a really good actress as well, so hopefully she can shine in the finale. Overall though, guys, I thought it was a really good fan film. Is it as good as the Haddonfield Nightmare? In terms of storyline, no, it's not. It's definitely not good in terms of the storyline, because I think Haddonfield Nightmare has a more even flow throughout the entire film. But I have to remember this is half of a movie because part 2 is coming. So in terms of the story, I prefer the Haddonfield Nightmare. Everything else, though, is a step above. The acting, the cinematography, the coherent Michael Myers, the overall look and the feel of the film, everything in that aspect is a lot better than it was in the Haddonfield Nightmare. And that's what I expected to see, because you do have to learn from mistakes. You do have to learn what was good and what could be better. And that's what Braden done with The Last Nightmare. So overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it from start to finish. So what are your thoughts on The Last Nightmare, guys? And also the big question is, do you think it was a good idea for Braden to release part 1 first and then part 2, or release it as a whole movie? What are your thoughts, guys? As always, leave them down below. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you soon.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll be right back.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played Skin the Cat?
Someone's in the